Welcome back to Trail Talk. I'm your host, Aaron Shimmons. Thanks for coming back to our Global Ultra Trail show. This episode is a debrief on TRE, the running event that just took place in San Antonio. I'm joined by Townsend, the Running Supply newsletter, and Krissi, Polentz, who is a Trail Talk reporter on the ground. And we're going to get into all of the stuff that's been making news from TRE, from Norda and Satisfy to Mount the Coast and ACG and some other wider takeaways from the show itself. So just finished recording that with the guys. Great conversation. Before we get there, got to thank the sponsors Tantrums, X Miles and Goreware. Check out the links in the description for discounts. But without further delay, let's roll the interview. Hi guys, welcome back to Trail Talk for our TRE debrief edition. I'm joined by Krissi, longtime co-host on Trail Talk and contributor, and Cole from Running Supply newsletter and Substack. Krissi, start off with you. How you doing?
Doing all right. Just still waiting around for winter. California is kind of the last holdout.
Cool. Cole, what about you? You're in the car somewhere. Tell us where you are.
Yeah, so I turned it around from San Antonio to went home on a very late flight that got delayed out of San Antonio back to Boston, and then turned around 4 hours later to fly out to Jackson Hole, Wyoming to go skiing, because there's supposed to be a huge storm front moved in, and unfortunately it's been about 3 or 4 degrees too warm for the snow to actually hit. It's a little dry here, but it's been absolutely beautiful. Like, it's gorgeous out here. We're right by this big elk reserve. So every time we drive into town, we can see all the elk out. It's great to be out in nature after being inside and talking to tons and tons of people, which is amazing and super fun. But now it's really calm out here. It's really early season. A lot of the businesses are just opening, and everyone's not tired of tourists yet. So yeah, it's been nice just even stopping at any store or seeing anyone, they're down to talk to you. It's not there's drones and drones of people here.
Yeah, that's quite a turnaround. 4 hours.
Yeah. So I had to pack really quick. Forgot my ID at home. Had to take an Uber back really quick and get my passport. I think my ID is actually somewhere in San Antonio, if I'm being honest. It slipped out of a pocket.
Yeah, I think I noticed that update on Substack or somewhere. And if anyone finds my ID, let me know.
Enjoy the souvenir.
Yeah. Let's crack on with the show. Both you guys were on the ground at TRE in San Antonio this year. Looked like a great event. Krissi, you were capturing a lot of content for Trail Talk. Did a great job there. Really appreciate that. Why don't we start off with just some high-level thoughts on the show itself? Kick off with you, Krissi.
Yeah. I mean, I think from the outside, we've watched TRE really develop and take off over the past few years under its new direction. And I think that's part of what had me intrigued. It originally was intended and still is very much functioning as a retailer-focused conference for people to set their sales for the next year and maybe even, looking at beyond. But there's now this other side of it that brings in media. I feel like there were also a lot of influencers brought in by the brands themselves to also then on the other side cover what's happening in the industry to help brand and market that for all of the brands that are there, and to get it out to the consumers and get them excited as well, instead of it being kind of this more industry kept secret of what's coming next season and even the season after that. So that's kind of why I wanted to go. And, I think it does kind of put it in this weird transitional space where, it starts to become so much more than it's intended to be. And the question is, how do you keep doing that while it still serves its main function? And so that's something I've kind of been thinking about, while also, recognizing that I'm not directly part of that retail side, but I find that there's value in participating.
Yeah. Certainly over the last couple of years, it's felt different. Well, what's your kind of high level on the event itself and your experiences there?
I was kind of polling a lot of the retailers that were there, and just anyone that was in attendance. I talked to James Osborne from the Exchange Collective. They're based out in Nashville, and he was just honestly, Christine came in, I don't know how many years ago, but more than a few years ago. And then over the last few years has really, she's the event director, Christina Henderson, has made it a lot more diverse, has brought in new media, added the live event. So you can kind of follow along if you're really interested. And it seems like all the stuff that still needs to get done gets done. Like people are still putting in orders, like people are still learning about, like it's a place for retailers to learn about new stuff coming out, new brands, which is kind of like what, kind of what I cover. So it makes sense to bring in media. Like if there's media that covers that sort of stuff, you would expect them to also be there to like help tell that story. But for them, like for the running event, it makes that event more appealing to brands, more appealing to retailers. It's a lot more valuable for brands if they can like know that they're getting extra coverage outside of just going there and being able to like present themselves to retailers. Like I think in terms of getting on shelves, like it's still really valuable. So I think it still fills that purpose. I think the programming that they've added was also like really relevant. Great choices around there around like, oh, how do we like make running more diverse? How do we like, what are we doing for women's apparel and running? Like that's just like stuff that's like hot button topics. And I was impressed. Like, I don't know, the running industry is like not, I feel like with a lot of these industry events, they're not like super sexy or like on top of everything. And like, I felt like they actually had stuff that was like really relevant, even though they kind of picked all the programming a while ago. Like it's still very topical stuff. So I was really impressed like that the educational portion of TRE is there. Cause like, I think this is stuff. Otherwise, like if you were solely focused on like filling your shelves and like selling through, you're not ever going to improve. And so like having the educational aspect there, I think is really good. So like you can evolve as a store and like learn and get inspired by like what other, retailers are doing or like what other brands are doing for that matter. So like I think you're always gonna have to cover like the base of that pyramid, which is like doing like the sale portion of it. But I think like if we can stack those extras, which like enrich the event, it all still feels like in the right wheelhouse. Echoing what you said about like the influencers and media, I think the media and stuff like that adds value, and they have separated how they handle. Seems like they've separated how they handle like press versus like content creators and influencers, and you get different access, which is good because like I don't think anyone would want, tons of influencers like flooding the floor and like doing live vlogging the whole time when people are like also trying to do, if you have someone in your booth that's like scoping out the line. I'm like, even when I was there and like saw someone scoping out the line, I'm like, all right, cool. I will see you later. Like this is more important to handle this now. I can just come back or like snap some photos. Like, especially if I didn't have an appointment or if I was like running late, which was really easy to do.
It's interesting what you say about the women's side of things, because it feels like that totally gets missed off on the hypey vibe internet accounts. Like I don't know of they all seem to be male focused.
I think they're all run by guys. Is the other thing.
Yeah, but I kind of, that's the point. Like the women's side is doing its thing, but we're not seeing as much of the hype stuff around it. Krissi, what was your kind of takeaway from like the women side at TRE and specifically in the trail space?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall there's definitely an increase in kind of women-led companies or women-owned founded companies, at Kreese, as Cole was saying, and that educational component about bringing in a few women-specific panels. I think when you look at the conference floor and you just look at kind of the event overall, it's still hugely lacking. It's still pretty, the demographic that's there is very specific, and there's still a lot of work to do, but it is good to see that stuff starting to get actually like not just like brought in, but supported and bolstered. In trail specific, I think you still see it less than you see in the general like running environment. You're still looking at these major, especially when you look at like the outdoor focused trail running brands, you're still seeing a very male dominated environment. The TNF environment, for example, a lot of these teams are very male heavy, and then you kind of get the female PR teams or creatives that are helping them get their messaging across. But it's definitely, I would say, a little bit further than the rest of the industry.
Yeah. One of the things that I think made the most noise outside was Nike's ACG pop-up. Essentially, it was very similar to the one that they did at UTMB when they did the takeover of Cynthia, the shop co-owned by Ravenel. And it feels like there's sort of two camps with the ACG thing. People are asking the question, are they really here? And then people are also seeing the news announcements about the race sponsorships and the prize money. Like, what was your experience or takeaway from what Nike were doing? It was almost exclusively trail, right? Come to you, Cole.
They had two sections of their booth. So like their booth literally split down the middle, and the like left side was like white, like the Nike bright white, which was like their normal store stuff, and that was like regular line updates and definitely less exciting. And then like the right side was like a lot more decorated and like like fully branded ACG, like ACG walkie-talkies, water bottles, whatever, like the whole 9 yards. And like a little bit more set up. And that was like the buzzier side. And they're definitely pushing, like even the Nike team, like when I was bopping around and like I'd swing through there because I have a couple friends that work for ACG, or like now work for ACG, I should say. Like once they started really bolstering that side of the company and like folded Nike trail into it, like I had friends move from Nike running and they're now like only doing Nike ACG stuff, like very specifically, which was interesting. But like even the team was just like hanging out in there. And then for the media event that they had, they presented like a handful of line updates, but like also talked about Nike ACG stuff, and that had its own table there. And then furthermore, they only brought pro trail runners. They only brought people from the Nike ACG team. There were no pro track athletes there, no pro marathoners. Like just like, you know, it was I forgot like how did my post about who it was, but yeah,
Caleb and Bailey were there, weren't they?
That's right. But yeah, that was telling to me about like how invested they are on this side. Like really, I think just trying to rebuild what Nike ACG means, because for the longest time, like it wasn't really a serious trail brand. It was more like street style that was like trail themed. And I think they're trying to like not only bring it back as cool, but like bring it back as like something that's meaningfully sport.
Yeah, I think the ACG thing is really smart move for them, because like, that part of the company, I think it just brings in like a new audience to trail running. And it's also disconnected from the Nike brand to a sense. Certainly, that's the sort of stuff that I'm hearing. Krissi, what was your takeaway from the ACG stuff, and what were you hearing kind of on the ground there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Nike finally recognized that the outdoor industry is something that they were missing out on and not putting the appropriate amount of resources into, either via ACG or Nike Trail. It does appear with the announcements about prize purses leading in, and with how they showed up at TRE, that they are maybe finally prepared to really put the effort in. I look forward to seeing how that continues to work, if they're going to stick to it, what that timeline looks like. I actually feel like, compared to a lot of the talk we hear about Nike, there's been a lot of positivity towards ACG, maybe more than I would expect. It seems like people are happy that they are supporting the sport, and that they seem to, you know, again, be bringing the money in that's needed to help professionalize trail running, that they're going to put more focus into developing their footwears lineup. You know, there's a few things obviously coming out next, where there's a few other things that are in the works, and then, you know, that apparel line to follow. So it's nice to see them coming at it from all sides. And I didn't hear a lot of negative talk. I think the way they led into TRE generated the right kind of buzz to set them up.
Like I would agree with that. I think also they were the only, to jump back in here, they were one of the few, I would call them footwear-led companies, right? Like, so like Brooks, a footwear-led company, Adidas, that like actually showed off some interesting apparel. It's like most of the other brands, like that was not really the focus at all. Like On had some stuff too, but like especially on the outdoor like trail side, like the only people that showed up with like meaningful apparel were like Normal and ACG. And like ACG really has like, they have like those three, you know, kind of like hero items. Like obviously the Radical Airflow shirt is like super striking. You're gonna look like a pair. I'm in a restaurant or like in a grocery store. They have like a new like wind shirt that kind of looks like the river shirt from Satisfied, just like a classic. Like I'm assuming there's a zip up or whatever, but it's like a collared sun shirt. And then they have that like I forgot what the insulated jacket's called, but the lava flow maybe jacket, which is like, again, like very striking looking, that like cool burnt orange color that they brought in. But like it all looks really good. And like while they weren't like pushing it or like talking through a ton of tech specs with me, they're like, oh yeah, like all this will be available to purchase eventually. This is cool. It's not like it's gonna be like some limited run stuff. Like obviously they're generating some buzz now, but like it will be available at some point.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about the ACG stuff, because it will be quality and it won't be super high price point. Like the Nike stuff always is durable, it's always good. So kind of, you know, the ACG stuff's always cool as well. So I'm excited about their stuff coming to market next year.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't think I thought about that. Like they are, like their price point is really accessible generally. Like it's not like cheap, but like it's good stuff, and it's not like, oh cool, this new thing's coming out and it's like $400 and you're like, oh
yeah, it's one of the other pop-ups or stands I think that got a lot of interest was because of how busy it was the Mount to Coast stand. And they're a brand that have, like, if you consider how young that company is, and they've just made so much noise and done so much this year, from athletes and races to the shoe launches. I'd love to get your opinion on how they showed up. Maybe Cole, you could start off there.
Yeah. So they're close with like the Swiftwick team. And Mark Chu from the CEO of Swiftwick roped me into doing their like opening day party, which like everyone was allowed to come to. It was like on the Monday before, which was kind of nice. And like it was great to like have a conversation and like a real meal. Or like, you know, they had like tacos there and stuff like that, but like have real food versus like stealing gels out on the floor. And like take a beat for a second. And like they had, you know, honestly really good. They had like kind of novelty cowboy hats, which were like surprisingly quality. And I'm like, that's kind of how I feel about Mount Coast as well, where I'm like, man, I saw these ads. I know they kind of got a bad rep with like the influencer campaign earlier on, where like they were only pushing influencers, or they were really hammering Instagram ads. And kudos to their PR team that they have in the US for being like, hey, we got to like turn this around. Like, let's lean into sports marketing, because like your rep is like not good right now. I'm like, cool it with some of the ad spend, cool it with some of the influencer spend, move into sports marketing. And like that worked really well for them. Yeah, it's like they were a great team to be around, like very welcoming overall, and like had a really good location. They were like right in the front. It had a pretty big booth and free snacks, which was like literally was an aid station. Like I probably went back there for trail mix and like Chex Mix like 4 times. So yeah, and like was walking around for most of the day in my H1s, and I love them. So like it, you know, withstood 8 hours on feet pretty well.
Big H1 fan here as well. Like, I'm wondering what we'll see from them next year with the launch of the C1. I'm not sure of the date for that. And then the M1, which is maybe June-ish, I think. Those shoes, like one of the takeaways from this year, I think, was with the T1 and the H1, there seemed to always be sort of stock in the shoes when people went to buy those shoes. So I'm wondering, will that change in 26? Krissi, what was your thoughts on Mount Coast?
Yeah, I mean, my initial thoughts were, is that booth just busy because they have 15, 20 sales reps in there? And it was a little hard because it was a well-designed concept. It was a well-designed booth from the outside, but once you were trying to function inside, it just was a bit overcrowded in a way where it's like you need to take those sales reps and they need to be having their meetings in another location so that there's better flow in here. I think what you said about wondering if they'll continue to be in stock, I think that's also a big question for me, because the vibe that I was getting is that they were doing business. They are entering more retailers, and I'm wondering how that's going to scale. If, you know, I think it's only going to benefit them, but I'm wondering once, you know, these shoes kind of leave the influencer side and hit the masses more, what kind of buzz starts generating for them.
Yeah, I think this is an important, 26 is going to be an important year for them. Cole, what about Norda? What was your takeaway from what Norda was showing? They had the 055 plus new colorways across the board.
Yeah, I loved the new colorways. Like I'm a huge fan of like leopard print in general. It's like super loud. So they had a really fun like leopard print one, and then kind of like a Cheeto print. Like it was like a leopard print, but like orange, Nike orange and black. And I'm like, I'm never gonna wear those, but that was super fun. Like it was great to see just like them bring in some new colors, because like they have, you know, a handful of colors, pretty limited line. Now it's like, okay, cool, you can get in any color, which I think is great, especially for their like baseline shoes. Like not even their like, obviously all their shoes are high performance, but like their baseline stuff that like people kind of just wear around. I think having more lifestyle colors, or like having more color choice will matter, because maybe people don't want, maybe you don't want it in like just cream or black. And their 055 like looked really nice, like on display. Like they clearly thought about like how it was going to, how it looks photographed. It looks amazing photographed when you're just like taking a shot in the booth with your iPhone camera. It looks really good. And I don't know how many people necessarily think about that. Like I took 1 million shots over the weekend and they all look terrible, except for my shots of Norda, which is like kudos to them. Yeah, they pay attention to a lot of the details. They didn't have a huge booth, but like what they did put together was really good. Again, Krissi, I didn't even think about the flow from like the Mount Coast perspective. Like, Norda was similarly like pretty crowded because it was like it's not a huge booth. So like I had like an appointment with him, like kept it pretty quick, just because like there were a lot of people coming through. And they didn't have even like a ton of samples. Like they had one pair of kind of like each thing.
Yeah, that shoe is, I think, coming out at, is it 325 USD? Same price as the 005. Krissi, what was your thoughts on Norda?
I think the booth definitely felt authentically Norda in like a very small scale, right? As Cole was saying, very like well thought and well designed, and how it was going to present externally, but also how it was presenting shoes in real time. I found the flow actually to be a little bit less of an issue, unless you were trying to get, basically there was a wall with the 055s, and then in front of that there's kind of more a traditional shoe lineup display. And so if you're just looking to get out on the surface, you could kind of do that from the aisle and not really get in too deep. And so I think that's part of what allowed it to be busy. I agree, there's some cool addition of color. I think the industry generally went very neutral in the past few years, and now is starting to kind of warm back up to having color that's, you know, done in a non-Hoka way, complement those neutrals. So
Monkeys catching strays.
so, you know, they've got a 005 that's got kind of a racier look with a red stripe. It kind of, you know, it says 005. Like, it's just, they're starting to look both like the running part and the lifestyle part and the performance part. And, you know, taking certainly pieces of everyone's feedback, I think will be TBD on whether, for example, adding a little bit of heel padding in the 055 heel collar is going to quell the concerns of the niche of people that have issues with the existing heel structure in the 005. You know, I think they're doing everything in a very smart way.
I mean, whenever I see the new colorway on the 005, I feel like it's way sportier than anything I've ever seen from Norda, where they've normally went for like moss and sand and black or white. Like, could this be the start of the turnaround, where the more vibey or hype brands, or I should maybe say the brands that attract the vibe more so than create it, or maybe turning to have a bit more of a sporty element? And I wonder how that'll feed more into the copy brands in the coming years. Cole, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, even like there was a beautiful like lemon yellow in the Satisfy booth, and it was like interesting to see, like, and like lilac in there. They brought in like that Grenoble green last year, but that was a really popular color, I feel like, in fashion at large, which is kind of like where they're not taking their cues from the running industry, really. They're taking their cues more from like fashion. So I would expect to see like them pulling that, and that'll be a little bit different than like what some of the other people are doing. Soars, but like they're already using, I feel like they do a good job of this already, where they're like, their stuff looks really high performance, and they like do have some more of like their traditional bright colors that running is doing, but like they're doing it in a pretty tasteful way where like it doesn't feel gaudy. And I think like we do see like more of like the gaudy colors. I think trail especially was like suffering from that for a while, where like a lot of the trail shoes were just like atrocious colors, and I'm like, this looks completely, you are like out in nature, and like nothing about what you're wearing looks natural. And maybe that was the point. I think for a while, to stand out on a shoe wall, you either needed to have like a really, really, really bright color, or like if you were so toned down, it would stand out amongst, like if you're looking at a shoe wall and you see like the Mount to Coast shoe, you're like, oh, this is like, it's like white and Helvetica. And that is like so strikingly different from like the wall of like Hoka, like that teal blue color that they have, or like honestly like anything else. And like now, even with like Norda, you see it on the wall and you're like, oh, this is like so muted and like tasteful, and then like everything else is like really loud. And some people want the loud shoes, but, and I think like now what you're saying, like we went so neutral and toned down. So if your shoe wall is mostly toned down, and then you have like the rad UFO on there, you're like, whoa, what is that? It's like that's advantageous to stand out. And it's like we see these like this like pendulum of like colors here. But I think like you're saying, Aaron, it's gonna move a little bit more towards the middle. And I did like notice some like flashier brands bring in some like brighter colors, which was nice. Like, you know, speaking mostly of Satisfy here, because like they're so normally muted on other colors, and it was like cool to see like some regular colors come in.
Yeah, I mean, if you compare that leopard print-ish Norda to, was it last season's Speed Goat with the, I don't know if it was a zebra or leopard or what it was, but you know, it's a similar idea with very different implementation.
Right.
Exactly. Just touching on the colors thing, one of the pieces of feedback I was getting from the Mount to Coast M1 in that green was that like two comments was two comment topics really with the thing was, this is going to be an amazing shoe, you know, in line with everything that they've done as hit, but it looks ugly. And I think it kind of, I mean, I'm not particularly keen on that green look. Whereas I think with just the simple white, they were able to get away with this very simple design. But when you slap all over kind of mossy green color on it, it doesn't really look as nice. What's your thoughts on how that Mount the Coast looks? And art? Do you think, I mean, I haven't seen a white colorway on the M1.
Krissi, do you want to take this one?
Sure. I mean, I'm biased because green's my favorite color, so it
Well, same here.
I see both are
tends
wearing
to
some
make me
green.
look past stuff. So I hadn't thought about it that deeply. I thought I did earlier today maybe see kind of a white off gray kind of color. I can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it distinctly a mountain shoe by giving it a mountain color. I think I expect their shoes to speak for themselves before I expect their color choices to think for themselves. So as I said, I'm not like overly invested in that color choice.
I'm glad to see them bring in other colors in general. Like, I'll be honest, like it was like so strictly white and black, and I'm like, I'm never gonna wear like a flat neutral gray. I'm never gonna wear. It looks like concrete. Like, don't want it all white, like with a black sole. Like that was pretty straight. I don't love like an all black midsole either. It looks like I'm walking around with like tires.
We are.
Yeah, which we are. I really like, they had like a lavender one that I thought was like really nice. Like some like the gentler colors and like the gradient ones that they do, I actually really like. Like it's pretty hard to do a good gradient. And they're like white to whatever color gradient that they have. Like I think they've the white to red, they've done a white to blue and a white to green. And like those have all looked pretty sharp. And I was impressed because like I just haven't seen that on a lot of running shoes. And I was like, oh cool. Like, they're doing this. That's great. This will be interesting to like appealing to someone. I kind of want to see what you're holding there though, Aaron. What is this one?
Yeah, I kind of liked how they did this
Yeah.
colorway on the
I thought that was
T1.
nice.
I forget what it was called. This was meant to represent the snow line for anyone that's just on audio only. This is a T1 with like the light kind of bluish, sky bluish sort of midsole. And I think that was a nice way of introducing color without getting too offensive up top. Like it's just, you look at it there, it's just the T1, the black and white. And then on the side profile, it's...
Yeah, I agree. It looks like the glacial freeze Gatorade.
Yeah. So I kind of maybe would have liked to see that theme continue with the M1, where they were introducing color by way of maybe the midsole rather than the all over kind of mossy green, darkish green. So yeah.
Yeah,
What,
I mean,
sorry, go ahead, Krissi.
oh, I was going to say that, certainly the green was not the best color choice. Again, I get what they were trying to do, but that blue and the lilac were the two color introductions that for sure stood out to me on their wall as like, okay, they're thinking about it, like they'll get there with the other shoes.
Yeah. Cole, reading your Substack, your part 1 about TRE, I absolutely love the bright lemon Satisfy stuff, the jacket and the pack. Now, I'm not a fan of the Satisfy pack at all, but it looks amazing.
It's like, I didn't use it.
What's your thoughts on Satisfy in general?
There was some feedback there. I think them being out there and like being more open in general. It's like they've done a bunch more interviews this year. Like I've been seeing them on podcasts and stuff like that. I think they're pretty closed off before. And I think them doing some like PR has been really good. Because I think a lot of people are like, in the same way that like anytime Tracksmith fumbles anything, people are like jump down their throat. It's like somehow they just like amassed all this not like this bad will towards them. Like there's just like so much ill will towards Tracksmith that is not deserved in my mind. And I think like Satisfy has earned similar amount of like ill will towards them. I think part of it's like a price, part of it's like a price thing. I think part of it's just like the vibe thing and like who is now tending to wear Satisfy, like the people that like, which is, it's not anything they can really control. But like some of the people wearing it, I think like are earning the brand some ill will. But I think like having them, I think them speaking people, like even their booth was a lot more open this year. Like they weren't as closed down, like is good for their PR and like they're all good people. I think like a lot of people just like need to log off and like meet people in person and you realize like, oh, like these are people, if they're like pretty normal, super nice guys. Like I've never had, bad experience with them. So like that specifically, like I didn't mention that on like the newsletter quite as much, but like I was really like they've all been super friendly and they're all just like cool guys. Like I would love to like go for a run with and like we're really generous with their time. And I liked seeing a lot of their stuff. Like they had a lot of cool stuff out. Like they have Breeze said something to me. It was like, we're really focused on like raising the bar for fashion. And like, that's what we're trying to bring. And like, that's why we're at the running event. Like that's what we want to bring to other brands. Like if we can raise the bar, like for everyone, Like that's our goal. Like they're focused on running fashion. And like, yeah, they make like good trail stuff too. Like the stuff has gotten a lot better, but like their goal is the same goal that it's always been, which is like, how far can we push the boundaries of fashion? And I'm like, cool. Like when you focus on that, talk about that, and everyone's like, oh, Satisfy's not for the culture, not for this, not for that. And it's like, oh no, they're focused on like doing running fashion stuff. Like that is their goal. And like, let them do their thing. Like that's what they want to do. Like let them do that. They don't need to be like, they don't need to make the brand more accessible. They don't need to like make it super performance oriented. They don't need to do anything. But like the fact that they have, like Reese has a vision of like, here, this is what we're doing we're trying to push like the like running fashion side. And so like now they're incorporating, I think, a lot more of that, especially in the outdoor side. So like they brought in a little bit more like casual wear stuff. They have like a really cool looking 850 downfill jacket that's going to be like a small fortune, I'm sure, but like looks incredible. And I love seeing like, yeah, like you're going to see some more fashion, like take cues from like high fashion. So I think like the lemon yellow color, I'm sure is going to be a trendy color in like everywhere. And it was nice to see that in contrast, like all their blacks and browns and like really dark punky colors. But then to see this like daffodil yellow in there was like pretty, it was like delightful. I would say it was like a delightful color. And like you usually don't get that from them. So it was like nice to see. Like I would 100% wear their like the Polartec Alpha lemon yellow like sweaters, like really pretty. And like that was kind of cool. So like it was great to see them just like doing stuff that's different. And like I think if my mom saw that hanging up, she's not gonna know what Satisfy is, but like she would go buy it. And like that's the cool thing. Like I'm like, oh cool, this is like gonna be more broadly appealing. And if they're gonna be stocking in Fleet Feet, like that's kind of like the moat that they have to cross is like, can this just be on the rack with other stuff? And someone who does not know what the brand is, like, will they still want to get it? Like, do they rely on purely their brand value and like the story that their brand, like the brand world that they've created, or can the stuff stand alone? And like I think increasingly a lot of the stuff will stand on its own. Like obviously certainly the Moth Tech, like their hero item does, because it's so different. Like some of the other stuff, if you had shorts on a rack amongst other shorts, it might be a hard sell being like, all right, these are 210 and these are 70. But like I think there's a lot of stuff that's like pretty unique that they have, especially with color stories, that, you know, are going to be like more broadly appealing. That was a long monologue, but those are my thoughts.
The thing with Satisfy is like they can focus on the fashion side, which is great. Like I love what they do, but they also need to focus on growth. And as they grow, like they are in a niche, and all of the stories, all of the things that you hear online is there's so much hate with Satisfy. And initially it used to be, you know, it was purely because of the price. Well, the price has now gone up as well. So there's even more of that. And as it grows, it's moving away from, I think, its original demographic, or like it's not punk rock anymore. Like it's more
right
high fashion running. And I think a portion of the trail community, and speak from trail rather than road or whatever, they don't like this direction. So it's very hard to even, like in our WhatsApp community and Trail Talk, it's hard to have a conversation about Satisfy because it just brings in the hate comments and the gifs, and, you know, it's hard just to have a conversation that, you know, actually they can do this and that's fine and you don't have to like it, but it still exists and people do like it.
Right, like people get mad at high fashion stuff too, like, right? Like plenty of fashion stuff is like ridiculous. Like you see runway shows, you're like, oh, that's ridiculous. It's like, okay, but they're just like trying to do something different. Like I think they're pretty well aware that they're not real cowboys. But like they wanted to create this thing, and it was a little bit like tongue in cheek. Like a lot of the stuff is pretty tongue in cheek. Like I know Loop just did like their official Moth Tech dealer like t-shirts. Those are ironic. Like they're not being serious about that. It is, and it is funny. Like they know what's going on. Like they're not like blind to all this, and they're just doing it and being like, yeah, of course, like we are real cowboys. It's like, no, they know what they're doing over there. But I think a lot of like the fashion stuff is ridiculous. And I think if you were to ask someone in the Trail Talk chat about like Balenciaga or something like that, they'd probably have a similar opinion.
Yeah, I think one of the comments in a recent conversation was around nobody slagged off Montclair to the same degree whenever they brought out the trail shoe, but that trail shoe was about a kilo weight. Like there's no way you could run in it. There was no bend in that shoe whatsoever. That was purely a city trail shoe, we'll call it.
That's for urban hiking.
Hiking between the shops. Satisfy obviously there's a lot of stories around like TheROCKER not selling, and we saw a lot of discounts on that shoe, like 30% plus even, I was seeing, with Black Friday, Cyber Monday, sort of the deals around there. You had some interesting observations on that, Cole, which we'll come to after Krissi comes in. Krissi, what's your thoughts on the Rocker? And you were speaking to them about the new team version.
Yeah, I mean, I think, whenever I hear someone like you or someone else that's actually truly running the Rocker, there actually are positive reviews. I think their problem is that they've started as an apparel first brand and a fashion first brand. And so then to try and go sell a, fairly performance based running shoe, you're gonna have to approach it differently. And I don't know that they have. I will say, so in talking with them about what they're calling the Rocker team, what they've iterated to another version of the shoe that you could call a V1B or whatever 1.5. They're taking both their athlete team feedback and consumer feedback, and they're iterating on that shoe to get towards probably what would be the next version of it. I think that they're aware that there's a lot of work to do to just get the original version of the shoe out. And so they are going to continue to focus, educating, marketing, learning about how people are using the Rocker. And so for now, that team version is just something that they've created that's on their athlete team. But I think what they really want to show is that they are tuning in to the runners and the runners' minds and listening. And I think that was my biggest takeaway is, okay, they do, obviously they've invested a lot in developing this shoe. They do need it to be successful. They do need, as you said, to continue to have cash flow. And so they have, I think, a bit of an uphill battle to make that shoe the success it needs to be. And as I said, it comes back to a perception question in some ways. And how they see that out there in running stores as maybe a standalone product, away from the apparel.
So they're sending out new insoles, 3mm insoles to existing retailers to reduce, which is a thinner insole, which is going to reduce the forefoot volume. So they're obviously they're listening to feedback. They have a shoe to sell and they're willing to tweak it. And I like that they're making these adjustments, and there's no change to the shoe essentially in terms of it's not a 2.0 or whatever, but as you say, Krissi, it's a 1 point something. Some of these tweaks that they're making, and then there's some other changes with the team prototype, which is, I think, the point of the team prototype is to try and see what are we going to do in the 2.0 Rocker. Cole?
Yeah, it's working towards that for sure.
Yeah, I was impressed to see that they were already obviously you're already iterating work, but I was impressed to see they're already started on version 2, and B, they've already rolled, they already have this update that they're getting out really quickly, and they're come 2020, still the V1 of the Rocker is going to be shipping out with these new insoles already. We're already putting that into production. I was like, oh, cool. Wow. That was nice that worked out for them. But it wasn't some insole that couldn't be removed. I could see them fully doing an integrated midsole or insole or something like that to save weight or, make it feel more premium. And it's kind of lucky they didn't. And they were been able to turn it around quickly because they got obviously a lot of complaints about the fit for some people. And I think a lot of people do not want to change the fit and do like the way it feels, because I know it does. What I've heard is it does break in as well. And it's once it breaks a little bit more, that is when it kind of hits the sweet spot. And I'm sure part of that breaking in too is that midsole, or sorry, that insole that's 3 to 5 millimeters, it's getting compressed. And it's instead of it being it's 5 millimeters, but then once you wear it in, it turns into that 3 millimeter sweet spot. It's I'm sure that's part of it beyond just the actual stretch of the upper. Regarding the sales and whatnot, I think the concern that I initially had, and their teams kind of talk me through the strategy behind it. I was oh, it's not selling out, and their stuff, especially with their footwear, frequently sells out. Those are all collabs though, and they're doing really low volume. They had pretty high, especially for a boutique store, pretty high minimum for the orders. In the same way you might have a high minimum for a Brooks Ghost, right? For people that are buying Satisfy, or people stocking Satisfy, they're probably not used to having that high of a minimum. It would be, it's abnormal for a boutique shop like a Loop or Exchange or whatever, where they're I'm getting the 20 units, I'm going to sell through instantly. I'm this is going to be good for us. Versus a Fleet Feet, where they're we do not want to sell through instantly. We're giving you a spot on the shoe wall, and that spot on the shoe wall cannot empty. Like, we cannot have that get empty. So like that was part of it. I think what we could have done for the rollout, do a smaller sale initially and then sell that out and then roll it out to stores. And I think that would have been like more standard. Like, people are used to that happening, and then there would have been like less cost for consumer. It's like, okay, cool. And like, that's what people do in streetwear. So I'm kind of surprised they didn't take that approach. Like, they had all this marketing and all this hype ahead of time. And it's like, all right, cool. We're going to do a super limited drop online of this Grenoble colorway that we're not going to sell anywhere else. Sell through all of that. That's going to be like really small, and then roll it out to stores. Bang. And then now it's like, cool, it's in stock. It's going to stay in stock. Make that part of the messaging as well, where it's like, this is going to be always there. Otherwise, you have people like me who are like speculating about it. They're like, oh, it's doing poorly. It's not selling well. And then like, I have to hear from their PR team that it's like, oh, it's actually doing fine. And like, I hit up some stores and they're like, yeah, it's like selling it like a normal shoe. And I'm like, oh, well, okay. That makes a lot of sense. That's the point. It's going to be a normal shoe. They're stocking it in Fleet Feet. It's not going to be like some shoe that's only in a Sentier, like only in, a Winthrow store or a Loop. Like, it's going to be everywhere. And like, that's, part of that growth strategy.
Yeah, I guess it just didn't feel satisfying in the way they've gone around about that. Like, thinking about that Grenoble green, I was really disappointed that that shoe went on mass release straight after UTMB. I thought it would have been way nicer if they played like the Jorts game with that, where they released it a certain amount, made it like exclusive, and then maybe they did another run of it later on in the year. So like, I come back from UTMB with my lovely Grenoble green rocker.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm going to save this. I've no need to rush and put that on my feet. I've got the slaty grey one, and that's the running one. And now there's people that weren't in Chamonix for UTMB running around in Grenoble green. You can still buy it. Like, I think they missed a trick where they still could have had shorter runs of exclusive colours and maybe had a bit more hype around the shoe in that sense. What I hope with the feedback from TheROCKER is they do not bring out a wider shoe. Like, I hope they do not go full Americana on one of the new shoes, which we know that there are a couple more shoes in the pipeline. I guess we'll maybe find out or have some inkling of another prototype TRE next year. Krissi, closing thoughts on Satisfy?
No, I mean, I think, Cole, that was really helpful to hear what their perspective was. I think as we said, we're all kind of just surprised because it feels like more maybe a traditional industry approach to selling the shoe, which we just don't expect out of them, but maybe they just need it to sell and to be reliable. And so they just said, you know what, we're going to do it differently and see if that works for us or if that works for this specifically.
Another brand that I have to bring up because it just looked like the best booth of the show was Tantrums and the Bodega. And Adam's done this approach, last year he had wasn't it the bedroom? The 90s bedroom, and he had the Trailcon, he had the desk set up with the whiteboard, and it was like the school or the classroom. Krissi, what did you think of the Tantrums booth?
Is one of the most creative brand minds I think we have in trail running right now, and his attention to detail from both like concept to like execution implementation is so appreciated and noticeable, but like so uniquely him as well. I think a lot of people, especially, I went and chatted with him a few times, and you would see people maybe from more like traditional run specialty stores that really more focus on road be a little confused and caught off guard and, trying to figure out, what, not necessarily what the product was. I think they got that, but trying to figure out kind of that connection of, carrying a bodega on your back in your vest. But yet again, year two at TRE, year two being kind of the talk of the town of, this is how you get your booth, your brand notice. And, I don't know that it needs much more than that. I think everybody knows what he did, and, hopefully it only helps him get in on the retailing side.
Yeah, I've almost nothing to add there. Like, I fully agree. Like, it was really cool. I was like, you're gonna get hit with like a cease and desist from Gatorade, but like otherwise, this is sick. I thought it was a really fun concept. Yeah, exactly. Like, everybody, honestly. I thought that was super fun. He's like, oh yeah, take whatever stickers you want. I did like a mini like photo shoot with the creative director from LSD running store. And we borrowed a pack, and I have to mail it back to him because it was a sample, and it somehow ended up in my carry-on home. But like he was super, and like it was such a fun concept for the store, and once he was like, oh yeah, well the vest is like kind of like your trail bag. I'm like, all right, say no more. Like it all makes sense now. Like it checks out. And it's kind of funny because like I'm used to that, but like there are probably plenty of people too in a regular running store. Even if you live in an area where it's like really trail dominant, you might not know the bodega concept might not work for you, which is kind of funny. Or like even if you're like maybe even European or something like that. Like it's a very city oriented concept, but I feel like most people like have some inkling of, even if you've ever been to one, like you kind of know what it is. But it's funny that they took that approach for the booth. I thought it was a cute idea. Like it's really well executed. That was probably like my favorite. That was probably like my favorite booth design, I would say.
Yeah, great bang for buck with the Tantrums booth. And like the thing with that, you're right, like it's a city thing, but it's also an American thing, but it's an American thing to the point that people around the world, I think, can still
Yeah.
connect with that and see that, with the Gatorade and the window lane. Maybe we shouldn't use those brand names, but I don't think they're coming after us.
Nah.
But like the thing that I love about Tantrums is that is a company and its product. It's about great product, but
Yes.
the marketing is fun. Adam is really personable and likable, and as a result of all of those things, it's brought the vibes or gets some hype around it rather than being hype first. So a bit like Norda in the sense that like Norda are product people and the hype and the vibes just come with it because it's cool. So I think Tantrums are onto a winner to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I think like their only like real issues maybe like the it's like a higher price point, but again, I think like if you're looking to get the highest performing vest, like you buy one of them, like you shouldn't need to buy it. It's not one of the things you're going through a lot of them. Like hopefully it would last more than a couple of years. And if you're like a super serious trail athlete, like racing, like you want especially like whatever works for you. And like if that works for you, it just doesn't matter. Like I don't think, price is going to be a particularly big object because it's so important to have a vest that like really works for you. It was a bummer because like the booth like around the other side of his booth was also a like pack / like hydration person, and I was like, oh man, that's a tough it's like a tough assignment for you from the running event.
Yeah, but like with it in terms of like the price point, we will all purchase at least a couple, 2-3 pairs of shoes a year. A pack, like if you're buying a pack every year, it's because there's quality issues. Yeah, like
it's wearing out.
The best pack in the game way back was the Salomon S Lab 8-liter pack, most comfortable. It was just perfect size, 8-liter. But every year you had to get a new one because the loops for the bottles snapped or like the front of the bungee pouch kind of ripped or whatever. If you're getting better quality, you shouldn't be getting it. Like you shouldn't be getting a pack that often. I have the original normal 5-liter from whenever normal launched. And yeah, it's showing its age a little bit, but it's still 100% functional. And that is 3 years. Oh, what was that? 2023 was whenever I got that pack. So I still grab it from time to time. It's a little bit heavy material, but I think normal have addressed that with the new vest. And also like the vest that they showed at TRE feels like they have copied the S-Lab 8-liter, like the material, it's 8-liter as well, moving up from 5 that they originally launched with. And they had this cool expansion pack or expansion waterproof pack that goes over the top of it, which is an innovation. We don't see that from any other company. Krissi, what did you think of like the normal stuff in general, starting off with the pack?
Yeah. One word is exciting, finally. I think the pack, they did a couple of things, obviously lighter materials, but still trying to keep in mind the strength of that material. So hopefully they don't fall into the same S-Lab Ultraset problem of tearing from the weight of things. They took a little bit of a different material in the neck and kind of around the underarms. That's more, more of a venting material. So you can kind of shed some heat in those key spots. And honestly, for me, and I said this to them, is that, add-on attachable compartment is so clutch for someone like me who wants to have like an everyday pack, that's in that like 5 to 8-liter range. That's just, for a couple of bottles and maybe like a jacket and headlamp. But I also need to be able to go and do longer races, longer days, races with required gear that just doesn't sit as well in those kind of packs. And so having both, the removable option to just have kind of a 2-in-1 pack that might cover most of the needs I have for wearing a pack, but also to have it be waterproof so that I'm not maybe doing so much like Ziploc and dry bagging for these races either. Like to me, that's huge. And it fits within, what they try to do with, a little bit of modularity, a bit of sustainability. So you're not buying as much, and then they have the kind of felt that's going to be, that's kind of same material as the vest or same materials to go along as well. They're updating women's crop with the pockets, which is like very exciting for a lot of us who struggle to find pockets in our apparel. They've got some kind of exciting like maroon, kind of minty green colors. We see just a little expansion, a woman's spandex short and looks like pants for both genders. So they're kind of slowly, gradually kind of filling out that, what we like to call the full kit winker.
Cool.
Yeah, I was impressed. Like I've always loved Normal, and like I'm just a big Killian fan. And it's like I would always expect the stuff that like his company puts out, especially if he has to wear it, to be good, given he's one of the greatest of all time to do ultra stuff.
Not one of the
greatest
of all time.
The greatest of all time. I was like, I mean, I'm speaking from like more like my trail background is like not as strong as you guys, obviously, but like I'm like in my mind, he's like the greatest of all time. And so like I expect his company to do well. I think when it initially came out, I was like, oh, it's like kind of small, but I think that's like better because like otherwise, if they'd rushed a bunch of stuff out and like had a full line already, I would be worried that some of the stuff would be like maybe not great, or like he wouldn't have had his hands on everything, which means like there's gonna be like some gaps or like some areas where like all right, it's clearly kind of weak. But like I was really impressed with their patterns and their prints. Like thought the shoes like looked really good. Like they've always had pretty good shoes, and I've always wanted them to be like closer to Norda. And I think now they're kind of getting there, especially like I think some of the stuff like now you could conceivably wear. I think they much like Arc'teryx, so like North Face and stuff like that, like Mountain Coast, their logo is like huge on the side, so I think it makes it a little bit harder. Like imagine if Norda's like shoe had like a massive Norda logo on the side, like you'd probably see fewer people walking around in them as opposed to just running in them. But yeah, I was impressed with their stuff, and like the bag expansion thing is really cool. And I think part of that I'm sure resulted from like him doing some like longer stuff now that he's not doing quite as much of like the single day races or like the shorter stuff where you can like switch it out. Like now he's doing these like multi-day, like he just had that giant multi-day excursion adventure. Like I wouldn't call it a race because it was like
Marketing
self-guided,
trip?
but yeah, marketing trip, I guess. Marketing race, marketing run. But yeah, like I think it's cool like seeing what they're doing.
Yeah, with whoever's listening to this podcast is gonna be constantly checking their phone for the pings.
I'm sorry, Jesus. It's like they're coming through. My bad. I don't know how I mute it. Poor person.
So yeah, with Normal, they actually, I believe, like they're the only company that has the waterproof compartment. Like even in the original pack, the kind of the tube that ran around the base of the pack was waterproof. It just wasn't big enough volume, so it wasn't that practical to use. If you were putting some layers in there to keep them dry from sweat, usually it was a real nightmare to get the stuff out. So this expansion pack for, I guess, you're probably going to put lighter layers in that and to keep them dry is actually a great thing. And I think it totally comes from Killian. The thing with the Caddy, the new shoe that's coming out next year, it's got like a male and female last at the front, right, Krissi?
Yeah.
Anything to say on the Caddy?
I mean, I think, it's a shoe that they probably needed to do, a shoe that's not necessarily a Killian specific fit or style, more of a workhorse and everyday, every man kind of shoe, a little bit wider, a little bit more cushioned, comfortable. So I think it's something that they kind of had to do whether they wanted to or not. But because of that, you'll find a lot of the chatters that people aren't that excited. People that already wear Normal are pretty happy with what they have. So I'm curious if it'll bring in a new kind of selection of people into Normal and kind of introduce them to, maybe they already know Killian, but they don't really know much more than the name.
Yeah, it's the things I'm hearing is it's the non-Killian shoe, and probably add to that it's the American shoe. Like the people who like Normal already like Normal, but Normal need to have a lot more sales in North America, and I think this is the shoe. This is their great American hope. The Caddy. Cole, what do you think about that shoe?
I didn't like look too deeply into like their, like I looked mostly at the colorways and like not so much like into the actual like functionality of their shoes. I know what they have, but in terms of like thinking about it from like a business side of things, like they aren't big here, and they really do. They grow, or like if they're trying to grow, North America is like the place to do it if you're not going to focus on China. And so like I think that's a little bit easier too, to get into the North American market as opposed to the Chinese market. It's like they're gonna have to, yeah, they're gonna have to make their shoes a little more adaptable. And like we even discussed like how with Satisfy, like the Rocker, like that shoe seems to be like more of one that like might appeal to like European trail runners as opposed to American trail runners. And like they're adjusting that as well because like they need to sell well in the US. So it's like kind of funny how that plays out, just both from like a fit and feel perspective, and then also from like the types of trails that people are running here. And I don't want to lead us too far, but like the other thing is they're they they've been pushing gravel again. And that was like a theme this year, across like a number of the trail companies. Like Salomon put out a gravel shoe. Mountain Coast shoes could definitely certainly double as gravel, and we're seeing a more like light trail. So I'd be interested to see if normal goes that direction as well, because it that doesn't feel on brand for Killian, but like it might be something they eventually need to do if they're trying to compete with the other mainstream trail brands.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And they kind of have to do stuff that's not on the Killian theme to expand. As we start to wrap things up and on the kind of on the gravel path, maybe Cole, I'd love to hear a little bit about the Salomon event and your kind of the thoughts about that, because you went to an event, you created some vintage tees for that as well, which I thought was really cool. Talk a little bit about
Yeah, that was like overwhelmingly my favorite part of TRE. Not just not the dinner so much, but like just connecting with people. And like it was cool to really get like time to like sit down and talk to people individually. Because it was such a small event. Like I think we had like 10 or 12 people at dinner from they were like outside, I should say. Like there was a bunch of people from the Salomon team as well, and got to chat a bunch with Bobby, who's like this renowned like wine connoisseur. I would say like he has his own wine label. And he also has a bunch of restaurants, and he was formerly like a pro cyclist, like domestically. I know it's like that's, yeah, for our European listeners, like that's, it's really good for us, and like for Europe, not that good. And then he's also like a pretty good marathoner. Like he's done just so many things, and it was great talking to him. But like he really appreciated the t-shirt, and like it was cool talking to him like how it was meaningful to him, and like hearing from every person how something was picked from their hometown or like where they live now, or like a race that was meaningful to them before. Like that was really special. And the food was also incredible. So it was just like a really nice event. Like gravel was really just like one small portion of it, but it was more like taking some time to like appreciate being together, talk about this like theme of terroir, which like is more of a wine thing. And it's like how everything about the location, from the weather to the soil to like the sun exposure, the slant of the ground, everything just like factors into your experience, and like how that also is a factor in like in trail running, in gravel running, putting air quotes on that, like really lump that in with trail running as well. But just like how that really impacts like your experience, and like how that changes even from like race to race, like who's putting on the event changes like how that feel is no matter where, even if it's on like the same course. So just like tying that into running was really nice to like have something a little bit more like elevated and artistic about it, like going into a weekend that was really about sales and stuff like that. It was just like nice to have something that's a little bit slower paced.
the whole gravel term. I'm just not sure about it. Like it's the best, like it's better than hybrid. It's better than road to trail.
Yeah.
But I still feel like the whole gravel term was so well owned in cycling that feels like it's a bit of a stretch to get it into trail. Like I'm not sure. I mean, I guess if enough brands get behind it, it'll become a thing. But maybe there's a better term for it. Maybe it doesn't need a term. I'm not sure, but
Yeah, I feel like gravel is like more brandable than light trail, which is like what I would just have called them before. Like it's got some grip on it, and it's like, okay, you can run these on roads and they're more durable. But like they're certainly better for running on like kind of looser dirt or like dirt roads than like a regular Pegasus. Like I've certainly run on a regular, like with a regular Pegasus on trails, and I'm like, I wish I had something more. So like I see the appeal. And like if you're in an area where you have more of dirt roads, like I'm in a super urban area, like I'm never gonna need this. And like honestly, running in regular trail shoes like doesn't work. It's uncomfortable because like there's so much road. And then on the flip side, like right now in Wyoming, I have like a pair of like Arc'teryx silent shoes, and I'm like very glad because like I need something that's, and maybe that's not even rugged enough for a lot of the stuff out here because it's pretty wet, and like pretty steep. It's like you need some like real grip on this stuff. A gravel shoe wouldn't cut it. But like if you're in dirt road territory like Vermont, or places in like Colorado, like in the Boulder area, which is where a lot of the Salomon folks are based and like Bobby is based, and he talked about, like, it's great for there. Like, that's the perfect shoe for running around Boulder.
Yeah, so many of the US trails, certainly out west, are more dirt, and you can run them in a road shoe. Like Puma Deviate Nitro or something has enough tread for that type of stuff. You know, it doesn't need to be a gravel, and it's not also a foam exposed road shoe. Krissi, coming to you, closing comments. Love to just know your favorite bits and takeaways from TRE.
Yeah, I think overall, very overwhelming, both as the first time, also as like a new venue with more booths. And I wish there was an easier way to really kind of dedicate energy to seeing everything. It's very hard to pack it all in, and you really have to focus on what you're there for and see kind of what else comes along with that. You know, I was excited by the smaller, newer, independent type of brands, both because of how they're pushing product design, how they're pushing the booth design, you know, the experience overall that they give and the energy that they give. I think a lot of the bigger, more corporate or kind of stalwart brands, you know, it's harder to relate to as humans, and they're not spaces that are conducive for creativity or like creative discussion. That being said, I think the energy in the whole room all the time was always very collaborative, positive. You know, you're hearing kind of everybody say that. It didn't feel like a competitive, I'm going to beat you out kind of thing, which you might expect, especially with all the market unknowns. And it felt like everybody was ready to support everybody else in the industry. And we love to see it. So that's like my biggest takeaway is like, running is at a really good place and it's continuing to grow. And I think trail, especially within that, really showed up in more than maybe it ever has at TRE. And it felt like it was a true part of the event. And then it's just kind of going to keep growing, and people are going to see the value in, you know, all side of either whether it's like endurance sport or all sides of running and different surfaces.
Great. All right. I need a yes or a no, like a short answer as we close it out. With the popularity of TRE in the last couple of years, next year, do we think we're going to see more hype reporting on the ground? Cole?
Yes.
Krissi?
Yeah.
Pains me to say that. I think that they are pretty particular about what media though they let in and what press they let in and what content creators they let in. And from what I understand, they actually cut back from last year because I think they're like pretty aware of that and like don't want it to turn into that. And like fingers crossed, like I don't either. Like it was like a really nice break to be like offline and have it like not look like any of the hype stuff online. And like I'm sure that's not even on the radar of like 99% of the people that are in attendance. Like if I made that statement, like they're not gonna, everyone online here is gonna know. Everyone that's like really glued into like, you know, dialed into Instagram and stuff like that is gonna know what I'm talking about. You know, for 99% of the people that are at TRE, it's just like they're like, what are you talking about? This is like all I have all year. And I'm like, cool, great, that's great. Like I love that for you. And I hope it stays like mostly that way, because that's really the soul of the TRE is like still there.
All right. I love it. Put it on your feedback forms. I hope that they cultivate it and keep it pure